Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day and realize you're perfect and perfecting at the same time. Yes, that was an awesome episode with Kimberly and Mike Spencer. If you missed it, pause this one right now and go check it out. You will love it. Today we have another fantastic guest. I know you will love her. She is awesome, literally just spreading positivity on social media. Tracy Farrin, huge on TikTok. So am I, in case you didn't know. And she's here today with us to tell us her incredible story of how she is married to her best friend for 17 years and in the middle of writing a book, still in its draft stages, all about marriage. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being here. You want to start by telling us a little bit about your background.
Okay, Tracy, I am so excited to start speaking with you. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
I have been divorced before. I got married at a really young age. I got pregnant at 16, and this was many, many years ago. And I kind of felt the pressure to marry him. Okay, 16 and getting married and being pregnant. Like, what tools do you have to make that a successful relationship? Zero. I had zero. But fast forward a little bit, had the baby, got pregnant. We got pregnant again. I was 18. And when I was pregnant, I actually found out I had cancer. And the husband left. I filed for a divorce. So I'm going through chemo and I'm pregnant. My husband leaves. I'm going through a divorce. I really did not have the tools or resources to handle or deal with all of it, but I did learn a lot from it. And so when the divorce went through, I'm like, hey, I get to enter back into the dating scene again. I really wanted to make
You're
sure my
still
divorce.
so little.
I know. So by that time, I was actually 20. So I was 20 by the time, cancer chemo was done. I wasn't going to start dating when I was sick, right?
Right.
And so once that was all done, and then the divorce was actually final, I'm like, okay, I need to move on with life. So right after the divorce was final, and it was about a year after chemo and everything was complete, I met a man. And we started dating instantly. We just had a connection. I know it doesn't work like that for everybody, but it was undeniable, the connection that we had. Within 4 weeks, he proposed to me. And I was like, yes, I'm so excited. But then fear set in, and fear was telling me, Tracy, you don't make good choices. Tracy, you just got divorced. Like, what do you think how is this even going to work? I didn't trust myself. I thought because he was such a great guy, I was like, okay, I've seen these types, you know what I mean? Where they put on the front, they put their best foot forward, they get you, and then they're a whole
Downhill.
person. And so I'm like, that's what this is, because these kinds of guys do not really exist. This is all fake. And so I tried breaking it off with him. And, but I realized, even though I was 20 and still young, I did realize that was fear. And that was not, my heart telling me or warning me. That wasn't really red flags. That wasn't my intuition, trying to guide me away from it. It was fear trying to guide me away from this decision. So I said, hey, and I realized that, and I don't want to ever, which I'm human and it happens, but I did not want to make that decision based on fear instead of intuition. You know what I mean? There's a difference. And so I went back to him and I was like, can I have my ring back? And of course, he gave me my ring back. And just a couple of months later, we were married. And we are going on 17 years of marriage. So it happens. It can work. Go with your heart. Trust your gut, the spirit. I think that we all put a different label on it, but it's all the same. The spirit, your gut, your intuition, your heart. It's all the same. And I went with that and it worked out. So it can happen. I know it's not the traditional, you meet 4 weeks later, you're engaged. A few months later after that, you're married. And he adopted the girls. And then we had 2 more boys. So we've added 2 boys to the family and we became a family of 6 fairly quickly, had them, pretty quickly. And so that's really the story.
Yeah, you do everything really quickly. Get married first time quick, get divorced quick, get married again, kids. Just running and enjoying life. I love that.
Yeah.
I think there was something that you learned in your first marriage that helped you for your second one.
Oh my goodness. Like, do we have time? You know what I mean? No, we don't. I think one of the first things I appreciate, I do not regret. It was not a waste of my time, that first marriage at all, because I learned from it and I was able to take some of these things and apply it to my marriage now. I just talked about this. I think there's so many, but one of the things was it was very humbling to have him leave me in that situation. And when I found, Ryan, the guy that I'm married to now almost 17 years, I was like, he did really seem like a good guy. And I wanted to snatch him up and not let him go. And I feel like the things that I learned, maybe just be a little bit more humble, never badmouth. I learned never badmouth your spouse to anybody. It really taints their image in that person's mind. And what's the point of badmouthing them? To make us feel better? To help people kind of see our side of it? Really, if we think about it, it kind of just makes you look stupid for marrying him, right? So it's like, here we are sometimes, and I don't do that because I learned in the first marriage not to do that because I felt like I did taint his image a little bit with my family. So I learned not to do that. So I don't do it with my husband. But it's like, you're sitting here complaining about this guy or girl and saying all these things they do wrong and how dumb they are. You chose to marry them. So what does that say about you as well? I think there are ways that we can go about talking about our problems, that we can go about maybe venting, but I think we should be really careful who we do that to. And that's just, we should not do that, So I just, being humble and not bad mouthing. My gosh, I don't even know what else, just stuff like that, that I was able to take into my marriage. But because I've been on both sides of the fence, right? I've been in a marriage that was not good, that was not healthy, that was just really bad. I realized instead of using that, as woe is me, poor me, I used it as, okay, let's do the opposite then, right? Let's do the opposite of everything that I was doing in that marriage, because obviously the things that we were doing, it didn't work, right? So if it doesn't work, all you got to do is do the opposite of it, and it works. So there's, date your mate. That is something that it's like a little hashtag I use sometimes. We get married, and I oftentimes see, and it takes effort, it takes work, but couples stop dating. Why? Right? I always say what you did to get him is what you do to keep him. And dating is part of that. So date your mate. I'm a big believer that our spouse or partner should be our best friend. I really truly to my core believe that. And so my husband and I have created a relationship where we are best friends. What do you do with your best friend? You call them when you're not feeling good. You tell them when you're down. You know what I mean? You confide in them. And one of the reasons I think it's important to have your partner as your best friend is for what I just said. You confide in them. So what happens when you're married and your best friend is not your spouse, but it's another guy, and you're confiding in him instead of your spouse? You start to build a relationship and connections that are probably inappropriate. And so I just feel like for so many reasons that your spouse should be your best friend, and it's okay. He can be your best friend.
Yeah, on that, I totally agree with you. Like, your spouse should be your best friend. Now, if a question comes in, let's say, right, I'm a female and I marry a male. Now, what happens if I have a best friend who's a female? Like, how does that work when you always say that, your partner is your best friend, can anybody else be that close? Is it like levels? How does it work?
So for me, I don't have any other best friends. My husband is my best friend. If you think about it, and I get that, right? You're having all your girlfriends and you've got all your besties, and then you get engaged and you get married. That energy that we put into that relationship with the person who is our best friend, that needs to be shifted to our spouse. Not saying that we still shouldn't put energy into that, of course, but that best friend now became your great friend, is now your good friend, because we really need to take that energy. Because if we're putting all that energy into that relationship, guess who's not getting it? Our spouse. So it's, yes, we have to shift for sure.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, awesome. Now, you sound like you have an awesome marriage, okay? But I know that there's still some challenges, I should say, that are in there. What is the biggest challenge that you had in this marriage?
Are you ready for some honesty?
Yes.
Sex. And I talk about that. I talked about it in my post. I'm like, yep, I'm a Christian girl. And I remember I even posted that on a Sunday, posted about sex on the Sabbath. That has been the biggest struggle in our marriage. My husband, probably no surprise, loves sex.
Yeah.
It is, the whole love language, right? Like physical touch is probably his number one, right? And for me, it's not. And so you can see where my love language is different. And so it's caused a little bit of, throughout the years, a little bit of tension in our marriage. But how we deal with it is we kind of said, okay, he's here and I'm here when it comes to sex. How do we get here? Well, he needs to lower his expectation and I need to step it up. So we may not be quite here, but this gap is now smaller, right? Because we're working on it. We talk about it. There are times when I'm not meeting his needs and he lets me know. He doesn't criticize me. He's not mean about it, because that's not the way to go about something like that. But he just voices his concern and I try to do better. It was to the point one time in our marriage that I said, should we go see like a sex therapist and try and get to the root? Maybe there's something wrong with me that I haven't dealt with, or maybe like medically, you know what I mean? There could be a reason why. We never got to that point, but that's where we were headed, because our relationship, every relationship needs that, right? And who am I to tell him with how often he wants it is wrong? It's not wrong on how he needs it and how often. And I have no right to say that, because he has no right to tell me my love language on how often I need it is wrong, right? So it's just about working together. And so that is something that we're constantly working together, talking about all the time. Like, honey, it's been a week. Well, we can go 2. What? You know what I mean? And he's like, no, we cannot go any longer. So
do you feel ever that you're giving him something that you don't want to give? Like you're doing it just because that's what he wants?
Oh, yeah. But isn't that compromise? You know what I mean? Sometimes we do things for others, or in our marriage, especially when we don't want to, but we do it because they need it. That is what I see in a lot of marriages, is like the love language. Oftentimes, we give the love language that is ours. And then our spouse does not feel loved or heard, or feels invisible. But we're like, but I'm giving you words of affirmation. I told you you're amazing. I told you I loved you. I told you that you were sexy. That is not their love language, and means absolutely nothing to them. They want you to do acts of service, or they want the touch. You know what I mean? And so we tend to give what we want. We need to give what our spouse or partner, what they want. So do I sometimes do things because he wants it and I don't really? Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do.
Okay, now what's your love language? His love language is physical touch. What's your love language?
So I believe that most of us have one or two top love languages,
right.
But I think to some degree, we probably have a little bit in the other ones. Yeah, of everything. It's just maybe I'm 75% this and 20, you know what I mean? 20 this
Right.
and like
Yeah,
5.
exactly.
So I would say quality time and words of affirmation are my biggest with him. Physical touch is big, but not as far as sex. I love to flirt. I love to hold hands. I love to hug. So our physical touch is and he enjoys that too, but it's just a little different. Gifts, I could care less. Someone giving me a gift, like for him, I won't say everyone, a gift from him does not make me feel loved, like at all. And so
Does he never buy you birthday
ago,
gifts and anniversary gifts?
So many years ago, we decided to buy our own gifts because he does not feel loved from gifts either. And so in our marriage, that works. We're like, here's your budget. Please, honey, do not buy me clothes. Do not buy. He learned the hard way when he would try and buy me stuff. I'm like, and we're honest with each other. I'm like, thank you, but do you have the receipt so I can exchange it or return it? And so that just works in our marriage that we are like, okay, you have 100, I have 100, because our birthday is like 2 weeks apart, and we get our own gifts because that works for us. You know what I mean? Yep. Buy our own Christmas gifts, all of it.
Awesome. Okay. You work things out for yourself. Is there anything that you do really different that people are like, oh my God, why does she do it like that? And it works so well for you.
Honestly, I don't know. I've never had anybody come up to me and say, y'all do that? That's so weird. I haven't. I'm sure there's something. I don't know what it is because I just, no one's ever pointed it out,
Yeah. Now, what have you been able to do because of your marriage?
Oh, I think everything, the book, my speaking, everything, because I need his support. And without his support, without his encouragement, without his words of affirmation, I would not be where I'm at. I think that it would be hard, and I know every marriage is different. I think it would be really hard on me if I did not have his support. I don't know what that would be like because I have it, but I'm sure it would be loads harder not having that. And so everything I have been able to do and accomplish with just in life as a mom, as a wife, business, all of it is absolutely because of the marriage we have and his love and support that he gives me all the time.
Yeah. And you support him? Yeah.
Oh, of course I do. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I love that too. Okay.
Supported him, like going through school. So he got his master's and his CFP. There were times in our life, in our marriage, where he would say, okay, honey, we have $3,000 extra. You can get those wood floors if you want, or I can do like another semester. Yeah, I made sacrifices. I'm like, go to school, get your degree. Like, so I supported him. I worked 3 jobs to help support him financially. But I'm always like telling him how amazing he is. Or, you know what I mean? I'm there. I think when you build that kind of relationship, because he's there for me, it's so much easier to give him that in return. Do you know what I mean? And to be there for him and to show him the love and support.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now, how were you able to go from your first marriage, seeing not such a good marriage, and saying, okay, I didn't give up on this and I do want to have a good marriage, and not just a good marriage, but an amazing marriage, what you have?
Yeah. So, I think it's important that when people first get married, they have the conversation. I had the conversation with my husband and I said, a good marriage isn't going to cut it for me. I need an amazing marriage. I need a great marriage. So if you're willing to do that, let's get married. But I can't do average. I just knew an average, okay marriage would not make me happy in life. I did not want to be miserable. And so I wanted a great, exceptional marriage. And so we talked about it, and he was on board, but that looks different couple to couple, even person to person within the couple. That's going to look different. And so from the get-go, we talked about, and of course, as the years have gone on and as we've evolved as people and evolved as a couple, it changes, right? Because in different phases of life. But when we first got married, we sat down and talked about what does a successful marriage look like? And that is something that has evolved. So having that conversation, something that I believe, and people do actually reach out to me quite often on marriage advice, because I do share, this kind of stuff that we're talking about. I'm very open and real on social media. And so people feel like they can come to me. And one question I get is, well, can a marriage work, if I put all the work in and my spouse doesn't? Sorry, it takes two to have I wish you could say it only takes one, but it doesn't. It takes two people willing to put the work, the consistent daily work into a relationship for it to work. One person doing it, it's just not going to work. So the great thing is at least it's only two people and not an entire basketball team to make it work, right?
And two is already you, so if you decide, it's only one other on.
Right, it's just two people. And so one thing I say is, a marriage, y'all should be on the same team. You should wear the same jersey. You should be going after the same goals. Yes, we are still individuals, right? But we are also one. We can be our own person, have our own goals and business and stuff, but then we need to come together as a couple, wear the same jersey, go after the same goals. So yeah, just a few extra things.
Oh, yeah. Oh, how has your marriage and view on marriage more specifically changed when you got married till now, 17 years later?
I don't know. I don't know how my view has changed on marriage or anything, but I just know that from when we first got married, going on almost 17 years, I just learned what I know now. I did not know 17 years. I mean, I knew a few things like don't badmouth your spouse, compliment, focus on the good. A few things I started off with in my marriage. But as time has gone, all of these tips and all these things that I'm going to share in my book and I've shared media, like all these things, that came after 15 years of marriage, that I was able to share all those things. And so I don't know how my view has changed, but I've just been able to, as time goes on, learn and build and make our relationship better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what's your top 3 tips?
One, it takes two. Just forget it. Like, honestly, forget it if two people aren't going to work on the marriage. So it has to be two willing people. There has to be trust. Without trust, you've got no foundation. So you need two people. It takes trust.
1 second. How do you get trust? If you don't as much trust your partner, a bit, but not so much, how could you go and build your trust more?
Go have the conversation. Go have the hard conversation and let them know why. Everyone's different, right? I don't know why someone else. Let them know why you don't trust them. And if they care and love you and are heart-driven and not ego-driven, they're going to do the things that they need to do to gain that trust. And usually it's because they've done something to break it, right?
Yes.
And if someone in the relationship has done something to break trust, then there is no time frame. You do what you need to do for as long as you need to do it until that trust is rebuilt. But at the same time, the person who is needing that trust rebuilt, because it was broken, let's not do I'm going to pull it up and use it as ammo when it's convenient.
Right.
Like, there comes a point where we have to let go and move on and not be using it. Well, that one time 5 years ago, well, I thought we were past that. We cannot do that. And I see that all the time. So that is something I do not do. Once, if there's ever been trust broken, or maybe he hurt my feelings, once I have accepted the apology and I've worked through it, I don't bring it up ever. Right? You've got to move forward and move on from that stuff. So it's different person to person on how to build it. But I think that is something over time that you get more of, right? As the person is doing the things to build trust, like, you build it and you get more and more and more. Once, if you break it, you know what I mean? Your trust bucket, we use the trust bucket analogy with our kids when they lie to us. We're like, your trust bucket is almost empty. So when they come back to us like, but Mom, I'm telling you the truth, why don't you believe me? We're like, well, because you lied. You have to gain that trust back. And your trust bucket is really low right now from all the lying. Do you know what I mean? So same with partners. You have to build that trust bucket up. And it just comes with time.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it's because it's a relationship that's hopefully lasts for many years. There will be ups and downs, but If majority of the time it's full, then yeah, awesome. Okay, so you said number one, it takes two people. Number two is trust. And number three?
I would just say knowing, and this is a big one for me, just me personally, is do not put your relationship on luck. Do not give luck credit. That is something that drives me bonkers. When people get to know us, they're around us, they see the marriage we have, they're like, y'all are so lucky.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we're not. Luck does not get any credit for my marriage. Work, consistent effort gets credit. And so for me, I feel like telling a couple that they're lucky, you are discrediting all their work because it's consistent work that they put into a marriage. So we have to understand that a successful relationship has absolutely nothing to do with luck and everything to do with hard work and consistent effort. Where's my quote? Here's a quote that I have. No one gets lucky. That's just what the unlucky say about those who put the right kind of effort into their relationship. So you can't give credit to luck for a successful relationship. It's just not true.
Yeah. It's a lot of hard work. But on that point, do you think that for some people it's easier? Maybe they had better role models or less trauma or something? Not that I'm trying to compare to people, but
no, I come from a mom who's been married 4 times.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you could speak.
And she was married to her 4th husband, who I now consider my dad, by the time I was 8. Okay. So I don't have the background. I don't have the story that was like, well, of course she has a great relationship. I don't have that. We created this relationship that we have. It's a choice, right? We choose regardless of what our upbringing is, regardless of the things we have gone through. That is never an excuse to say, well, I guess I can have this. Like I'm just destined. No, you choose to have that. So I do feel like for me and my husband, maybe one reason you could say it's been easier is I talk about, and in my book, I talk about this, is I say hard work over hard work. And I talk about how a marriage will feel hard when you are functioning from ego and pride. Ego and pride comes from the mind, which is why I'm such a heart girl. I always try and let my heart guide me and not you have to use your brain, but not the ego and pride, which does not come from the heart, right? It just feels like, in my opinion, work. Of course, it's going to be consistent work when we lead with heart, right? There's no room for pride and ego. So pride and ego is not forgiving. Pride and ego is yelling. Pride and ego is being offended by what your spouse does. That's pride and ego. So yeah, you're putting work in, a lot of work, and then it feels hard because those actions and those feelings feel really hard. When we can get over our damn selves is something that I say, get over your damn self, girl. You know what I mean? And we can lead from the heart. It will not feel like hard work. It will feel like hard work for sure. But that is one way I know. I use that as a gauge, right? If this is feeling hard, I'm here. If it's just hard work, it's because I'm leading from here. So that is something that I use as a gauge. I think if a marriage feels hard all the time, it's okay. It's fine. It's just feedback that something's not working and something needs to change. Because I was just telling my husband the other day, we tease each other all the time. And I can't remember what he said, but I'm like, I choose to be married to you. Just so you know, if I was not happy in this marriage, I would not stay. I choose you every single day. And it's because we have, I would say, like a 5-to-1 ratio. I heard about this. It's not my own thing. And I was on relationships, but when a relationship, let's say, or let's just call it, the 5-to-1, if 5 interactions are negative, it's going to feel hard. But when you have like a 5-to-1, so maybe out of the 5 interactions, 4 are positive and 1 is negative, we're still doing good. The moment you flip it to where it's 4 are negative and 1 is positive, something's out of alignment, right? And I remember a few years ago, because I remember it vividly, and I remember I posted about it. I was probably about 2 years ago, I was starting to feel irritated with my husband all the time. And I realized it's because our interactions were not where they should be. It was the 4 negative, 1 positive, because I was choosing to focus on all the crap that irritated me. And that's another thing. What we focus on expands, right? I am not perfect. He is not perfect. But because 95% of the time in our marriage, we focus on what they do right, that expands, right? My husband is not perfect, but I could not sit here in all honesty. I could not sit here and list off things that bug me about him because I don't focus on those things. I focus on all the things he does right, and I call him out on those. So often we want to put our spouse under a microscope, right? For all the bad things. Well, first of all, you put anybody under a microscope, it's probably not going to be good. And so I always tell people, if you're going to stick your spouse or your partner under a microscope, do it for the right reasons. Look for the good in them so that those can expand and those get bigger. So what we focus on matters. And that is something that even at such a young age, at 20 and getting married to him, I learned as well, was I was going to focus on all the good in him and I was going to compliment him. What did that do? That made him feel good and it made him want to live up to what I was saying. And so he always did, because that's what I focused on. And not that I lied. I didn't ever lie to him. But if I had to just dig for that good, I dug for the good.
Oh,
You know what I
yes,
mean?
yes. Did you ever hear of the nurture heart approach?
Uh-uh.
You would love it. We actually had someone earlier on who spoke about it, but know about it for quite a few years. It's an amazing, amazing method. It's really made for children, but it works great with anyone. Where literally you only give attention to the good and zero negative at all. So in the beginning, when you start as a kid, imagine like a kid who's really difficult and everyone's just yelling at him, putting him in timeout, all bad things, and he's just getting tons of negative attention. You can't even find one thing that he's doing that's good for you to compliment him. So you almost have to do, like you said, Doug, really deep, create something for him. So if he gets into the car and he maybe doesn't even buckle up, but he closes the door, then you compliment him on the fact that he closed the door. And then like, okay, that broke the pattern. And then from there, you could go on and build much more.
Yeah, and I think that's what we definitely did and used in our marriage in the early days, you know? Yep.
Oh, so you've been doing this like for a while already, never...
No, we started doing that from day one. Mm-hmm.
Was that something that you spoke about? It just came naturally?
It was just something that I did. I think I learned in my old marriage, you know what I mean? And that was something that I was like, okay, that's something I want to do differently in this marriage. But he was also such a good guy. And I just wanted him to feel loved and appreciated. I just wanted this marriage to be different, you know? And so that was one of the things I did early on, was always compliment the things that he did right. And I just started, and I didn't know the psychology behind it or you know, or anything, or that it would work. I just started to see that it was working. And so then there was just more and more to compliment him. I always say, so me and my husband, we kind of sometimes compete with each other, but we compete in the sense that if he does something kind for me, I'm like, ooh, what can I do better? Like, how can I outdo him? I think that kind of competition in a relationship is actually
good competition. Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you did that for me? Well, I'm going to do this for you. And that's just something that we've done. Like I said, being in a bad marriage, I just knew I wanted this to be different. And then also having a mom who's been married multiple times, you see something that's not working, just do the opposite of it, right? Like, just do the opposite, and usually it's going to work. And so that's what we did in our marriage. He, of course, comes from a family where his parents are still married. They're going on 40-something plus years. And so he has that. And so I think him coming from the upbringing where he saw a healthy marriage was good, and it helped our marriage. But me coming from maybe a upbringing or a past or history that you shouldn't say, instead of using that as an excuse to repeat and do the same things, I used it as a reason to do better.
Yeah.
And so bringing those two together and communication, oh my gosh, is vital.
Yeah.
Being willing to talk it through, and we've actually never talked about divorce. Divorce has never been on the table.
You did joke about him that you choose him every day.
Yes. But we've never, we don't threaten divorce. I'm someone where it's important that when I say something, I mean it. I don't say what I don't mean. I often hear people say, well, I yelled at my spouse and I said all these mean things to him and I feel bad, but that's just part of marriage. No, it's not. It's part of your marriage. You choose to respond that way. I do not name call or yell at my husband. Sometimes I'm like, honey, you're really being an ass. Because he's really being an ass, right? Not because I'm trying to hurt him or jab at him, but he knows when I say those phrases, one, I'm not going to apologize because I mean what I say. And we have the kind of relationship where if I have to say that to him, he's like, oh, I must be being an ass. And we kind of were like,
because you don't use it for times when it's not true. You only use it when it needs to be said.
When it needs to be said. And I'm a believer that it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Because we have built that relationship where we trust each other, we honor and trust each other's opinions and how we're acting. When those words come out, it's like, oh. So I think you have to call your spouse out when it's necessary. You have to have that relationship. And there are times when I'm just being a bee. And he's like, honey, and he's not mean about it. He's like, you're a bee. And he doesn't say much because that's a little much. But he's like, you're being a bee. And I'm like, am I? Okay.
Oh, okay. I need to do something. Yeah.
Be willing to call your spouse out in the good way, but also when they need a strong hand. Hey, your actions or the way you're behaving, that's not who you are. This is not okay. And that does take, I think, a certain level of communication and trust. And I don't know that I would do that right away. Right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think once you have that trust and you have that whole really strong foundation, then it works really well. But if you start first day you got married, calling people out, that's a big red flag.
Right. And so when I hear that, it irks me when people are like, well, that's just part of marriage. I'm like, no, you made that part of your marriage. That is because people are in the habit. It's a habit to respond that way, which is good news. It means you can break the habit and develop healthier ways of being. Do my husband and I have disagreements? Yeah, we do. Do we always see eye to eye? No, but we don't fight. We don't name call. We don't sling mud. You know what I mean? We have to learn to, and I think that comes from just learning to communicate. And I think we all do it a little differently. And it's going to take some time to figure out how each other communicates and how we need to come together, but it's worth it. I also
learning how your partner communicates because
yeah. And again, right? The name calling, the yelling comes from being offended, comes from ego. Then your marriage feels like hard work. Okay. Learning to communicate and just talk about our feelings. Yeah, that takes a level of being vulnerable, but that comes from your heart, which is why, in my manuscript, it's not all complete or written. I talk about heart work over hard work. Hard work is just feedback that you're probably leading with ego and pride. And we got to learn to get over our damn selves and go back into the heart. And I think most people know. They know when they're leading with
when they want to
pride.
admit it, they know that it's what it is. Yeah.
They know. Nobody needs to tell somebody, oh, you're being when you're being that way.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay, so for our final question, what I ask everyone, I'm going to ask you how to describe an extraordinary relationship without using these 3 words. Okay? Love, intimacy, and connection.
Love, intimacy, and connection. Were those the 3 words?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I would say it's just two imperfect people coming together, learning how to get over them themselves, learning each other, and putting in the consistent work that is required, knowing their love language. I think that love language is vital, vital. The love language and heart work.
Those are your like two biggest things. Question on love language. I know I said a last question, but apparently not. Did you think, I know people's love languages could change over time, right? Has yours personally changed or not since you?
I think as humans, we do evolve. We change as humans, as individual, and in our relationship. I don't know that mine has necessarily changed as I just became more aware of what it is. And when you bring that to awareness, things make more sense. And I'm not saying it can't, because I'm sure as you evolve, those things, they can probably a little bit, or maybe one's 45 and one's 35. Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe there's a little bit of a change. Seasons, we all go through different seasons. Oh, yeah. So for me, I don't think mine have, but I'm sure that it absolutely can for some people.
Yeah. I think also like when you're aware of it, besides for being able to ask for it, then you could also notice how different things were a love language. Let's say, for example, let's say yours is not gifts, but let's say yours was gifts. If someone does an act of service for you, although that's not your love language and your love language is gifts, you could view it in a way as a gift. So this gift of coffee that he made for me, part of it, you're like, okay, he is trying to show me that he loves me.
He is, and also be willing to speak up. So I am not the kind of woman where I feel like I need a hush hush. I have a voice, and I always tell people this. God gave you a voice for a reason. Use it, right? And use it for good. Let's not use it for hate or ugliness or ego and pride. So why not speak up? Learn to speak up. And these were some of the things I did from day one. That was one thing he loved about me. I was feisty, right? I have a bone and I speak up. I have seen where, 10 years into a marriage, and all of a sudden they're demanding change. Well, I get that. Do I think that change can happen? Sure, absolutely. But I think these things, it's so much easier if it's just done from day one, if we talk about it and we develop good habits through the marriage versus 10 years in and we're like, this no longer works. Yeah, well, it worked from day one. So why isn't it working now? And then it causes all these problems and contention. And it doesn't mean it's okay, but you've let it go on for 10 years. And all of a sudden, now you want to put your foot down? It's going to be really hard at that point. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Absolutely, it can if two people are willing to work at it, but it's so much harder. So start off on the right foot. Talk about these things. Have the conversation. Set the expectations. Use your voice from day one,
Yeah. And if you haven't yet, then start using it now.
Start, yes.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tracy. This is amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.